Welcome to the Diocese of Northwestern Pennsylvania's very first session of Just Ask the Bishop. I had a number of questions from around the diocese, and I'm hoping to answer them to the best of my ability. The first question is, we've had many people ask, what is a provisional bishop? Well, a provisional bishop is an interesting creature. It's relatively new in the church, but it's something, a way of thinking about being the bishop of a diocese that we're beginning to experiment with in different ways around the church. When a diocese has a vacancy or for whatever reason no longer has a bishop, the standing committee of the diocese, in consultation with the presiding bishop, can choose another bishop of the church to put forward as the bishop of their own diocese. One person is placed on the ballot and elected with what is called provisional status. Actually, there's no such thing as a bishop provisional. There's a bishop with provisional status. That means that a bishop with provisional status has no tenure. Bishops in our church, as you may or may not know, are elected with life tenure. Provisional bishops are elected by a convention for a specific period of time, but do not have life tenure. That's a provisional bishop. Here in this diocese of Northwestern Pennsylvania, I'm bishop for life, but I'm also bishop provisional of the Diocese of Bethlehem. That means for a period of a few years, I'll be their bishop to help them think through some strategic issues and to move to elect their own diocesan bishop, who won't be provisional, but will be their bishop for many, many years. This is an experimental arrangement, and while we're encouraging experiments all over the church, why not have dioceses and bishops experimenting as well? Stay tuned, and you'll see that the Diocese of Fort Worth will be electing a provisional bishop. My colleague Scott Mayer, who's the Bishop of Northwest Texas, will, God willing and the people consenting, become the provisional bishop of Fort Worth as well. The next question comes from Diane at Trinity Memorial Church in Warren, and she asks, how does the diocese plan to communicate with people who do not have internet access? Thank you for the question, Diane. It's something that we've been working on from day one when we really began to place an emphasis on electronic communication. We're aware that some people and places in this diocese still don't have access to broadband, and still others aren't able for whatever reason to have internet access. And since the inception of the Forward in electronic format, we've been sending it out by mail to people who ask. And we have a number of monthly subscribers to whom we send the Forward each month by what the old-fashioned snail mail. Beginning in June, we're going to be printing a half-page bulletin insert with much of the same information that are in our electronic publications that will be printed in church bulletins around the diocese. So rest assured, this is something we care very much about, and we're working to make sure that we have good communication with all the people in our diocese. From Jacob at St. James Church in Titusville, he asks a poker question. If I'm playing heads up, sitting in the big blind with 6-6 in my pocket, and the flop shows 4-5-8, how do I play the hand? Well, Jacob, you ask a very complicated question. As you know, when you're heads up with an opponent in no-limit poker, a pocket pair is a pretty powerful hand to have. The fact that you're in the big blind means that you already have a full bet in the pot. But here's the issue. You're really drawing for a gut shot straight. And as you may or may not know, you're 11-1 underdog to hit that gut shot straight. What makes it even worse is with this pocket pair, you're a 22-1 underdog to hit the set, which is really what you need to have that pocket pair turning from a strong hand to a monster. So this is what I would say. If your opponent tries to limp in, that is, just put one full bet in there, you should definitely raise. If your opponent raises, then what I think you should do is really calculate the pot odds to decide whether you can play that hand. But really, when you're heads up with a pocket pair, I think you've got to call the first bet even if your opponent pushes all in. It's a risky play, but hey, with a pocket pair, you never know what'll happen. 11 to 1 or 22 to 1 or not. And finally, several youth in the Vine, which is a youth group made up of a variety of congregations in the Erie area, ask me, what is my favorite Bible story? Well, I think in many sessions of Ask the Bishop, I'm going to have to address this question because, of course, I don't just have one favorite Bible story. But one I'm willing to talk about is the story of King David, which I think is a powerful story. Here's the one that Jesse doesn't bring out, but ends up becoming the king. And as you know, as we all know, David was not perfect. In fact, in many ways, he was a flawed human being. But every time he tried to return to God and step out of doing things his way and to do it God's way, God always honored David. David suffered often because he wasn't walking with God. But what the story of David reminds me is that God sometimes chooses the weakest among us, the smallest among us, to show forth God's power and the miracles of God in the world. David fell many times, but each time he got up, and wow, what a powerful legacy King David has. Well, thank you so much for tuning into this very first session of Just Ask the Bishop. We have an exciting summer coming up. I hope you'll tune in to this summer's General Convention, which will be in Salt Lake City, Utah. We have so many wonderful issues of mission. We're going to be talking about evangelism and church planting, along with marriage and restructuring our church. So I would ask your prayers, and if you have a minute, check out the generalconvention.org website for the Episcopal Church and tune into what's going on, not just in your own congregation or your own diocese, but in our church, which is one international church. So thank you, and have a great day in the kingdom.